The challenge was to make a film that could, a film like The Goonies or Stand By Me, these, great classics from the 90s, to say that comic kids could sit alongside that on a shelf equally. And that's a huge challenge. And I hope we've done that to some degree, but that was the challenge. That was what we were trying to do. That's what I was trying to do, to make a movie on that level, that quality, and to have that heart and that adventure about it, and that sort of, that element of friendships, and to have the kids all, be a family, I guess, by the end of it, which they've become, which is great.
I know Glenn wanted a new project, and I said to him that he should do a kids movie because he really loves The Goonies, he loves Flight of the Navigator.
Bethia, said, oh, you should do a kids film. You should make a, children's family fun adventure movie, which I love the idea of, but I didn't have any idea of how to make that film. I didn't have any good ideas that would, warrant a script to go into production.
What would actually happen in this film? What would be the purpose? It needs to be an adventure. So what would the adventure be?
Then the idea popped up of they'd try to find this comet piece that crashes, which I love the idea of that space sort of, science fiction type of fantasy. So when that idea popped up and we started sort of chatting at my mum and dad's place, I immediately thought The Comet Kids is a great name for a film like that. I would love to see a movie like that called The Comet Kids. So the name sort of was the first thing to come into existence, I guess.
Yeah, we just built on that, and we talked about so many different scenes and adventure bits.
So I spent a year writing the script, maybe a little bit less, and me and Bethia just bounced ideas off each other.
Even though Glenn's been very kind to write that I helped write it, I didn't actually help write it. We discussed ideas and brainstormed for months.
I basically wrote everything, but I made sure it filtered through Bethia's brain before it hit the page.
And then Glenn was the one that actually wrote the script.
I think the most difficult part of it was, we knew the kids were going to go try to find this comet piece. The most difficult part was why, how can we make that personal, and what's trying to stop them. And that turned out to be extremely difficult. When you see the movie, it's a very simple story, but to make simplicity work was extremely difficult for a whole bunch of different reasons.
And then eventually I think Glenn came up with the idea of, oh yeah, maybe a piece is broken off.
The idea of the piece breaking off the comet wasn't with us straight away. That took a while. Originally the comet just crashed and the kids went and found it.
But are they travelling to see the comet? Or is that a bit silly? Should they have a purpose when they get there?
But we found that if the comet crashed, it stopped heaps of stuff from happening. Visually, there's nothing to see later on. And I really wanted to tie in the whole idea of families and sort of that elliptical idea of generations through the cycle of life, and the comet tying in this family story. So you've got, this character when he's a lot older, and then 74 years earlier when he's a kid and goes on the adventure. And so, we found that if the comet stayed in the sky and a piece broke off, that gave us heaps of freedom to make the story far more interesting.
Well, I think originally the idea was, once the script was done, there was a lot of talk about really trying to do it properly. Let's get proper funding. Let's go through the right channels. We
sort of went after a big budget to start with. Not that we pushed it to that extreme, but we thought, this needs a lot of money to make this project work. And everywhere we went, people weren't too interested. They couldn't really see, I guess, the final product in the way that I and maybe Bethia could see it. We had a lot of different people offer ideas, a lot of studios, and I think one of the funniest ideas was someone said, can there be animals in the film? We said, yeah, there's a dog in the movie. And they said, can the dog talk? And I said, no, the dog will not talk.
To try and get funding, that's right, Glenn decided that you need to have something to show people to get funding. So he thought, well, let's cast a few kids and let's just film this like mini sort of teaser spot so that we could take it to places and try to get funding.
And so we thought we need some kids to be in this trailer. We weren't, at that point, we didn't know exactly how much of a trailer we were going to shoot, but we know we needed a cast.
Hello, my name is Xavier West. I'm 13.
I think one of the first people that came in, I think Xavier was pretty early on.
Well, I first heard about the COMET Kids. I was looking through some work and applications through a casting application, and I came across the COMET Kids, and I thought, had a read, and I'm like, this is actually really, really interesting.
I'm pretty sure initially with Xavier, I think that Glenn didn't actually think of him as the lead kid.
And I thought, oh, maybe he could be Guns. And so he came in and he read, and I immediately knew he wasn't Guns, but he was really, really talented. Like his accent was perfect and he could act really well.
I'm sure somebody knows what's actually out there in space, Dad.
And I think he probably gives the best performance in the film. He is the lead, of course, which is a good thing.
Mum ended up seeing the audition for the COMET Kids, but when she read through it, there was, and I'm not sure if it was highlighted or anything like that, because she didn't show it to me, but it said you'll need to ride a bike a lot, and Mum thought, nah, Harry won't like that. Harry won't want to ride a bike a lot, so I'll just let this one slide. So
Harry possibly was the most memorable audition for me, I guess, because he came in with this American accent, like really good American accent.
My name is Harrison Bradley. I am 14 years old.
when I was driving there with my dad, I thought, since they asked for an American accent, I thought it would be funny if I spoke the entire time with an American accent to see if I could convince them that I'm from the States.
Gunsworthy? So that's his real name.
Anyway, so he comes in with his American accent and does the audition, answers all the questions in this like American accent, and we're just all talking after the audition.
And then just at the end of the filming, Glenn's brother took the time to actually ask me where I'm from in the States.
Were you born in America?
No, I'm actually Australian. Dad and I had a little idea that when we're in the car, let's speak American the whole time and see if they think I'm American.
And I thought that was a big achievement.
I'm Juliette Salom and I'm 16 years old.
Now Juliette came in and she was stunning. She read for, I think at the time the character's name was Georgia, and we changed her name later to CLAUDIA.
I remember Juliette coming in her costume, like essentially what ended up being her costume, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, well, the day of my audition, I remember I was extremely tired because I was up to all hours the night before, which I probably shouldn't have been, but sorry.
Are you okay?
I'm just not very good for water.
The only problem with Juliette was she couldn't do the accent. She couldn't get the American accent down.
When they contacted me, they did say Australian and American accents were both accepted. So I'm like, oh, well, I'll just do an Australian accent. I won't prepare an American accent. But then I had to do one in the audition, and my American accent isn't exactly good in any way, shape or form.
But I just loved her so much, I knew she had to be in the film, so I just said, we'll make it work, which we did.
Luckily, Glenn, the director, talked to me and was like, it's all right, you can just stay Aussie. We'll have the token Aussie character in the film.
The audition was on my birthday, so I couldn't go to the audition. I remember that and I was like, damn, but then I just asked him if I could self-tape and he was like, yeah, sure, and he sent me the script and I think my mum filmed it on her iPhone or something, and it was like, I did it in an Australian accent. And
So I remember looking at her, she sent in a video, and I remember Glenn asking me 100 times, what do you think? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure. Like, it's hard to tell off just a video being sent, because they're not interacting with you in person, so you're not getting that feel, that vibe of what they're like. But I think Glenn always knows, he has gut instinct.
And then Liam came in, and Liam was nervous as hell. He was so nervous.
Oh, I was incredibly nervous. I don't know why. I think like the whole, it's a feature film and stuff like that.
Liam, and I'm 16 years old.
And the audition was so bad, and I don't know why I'm here now.
Nothing that he showed to us, show reels, nothing, said that he could play this character the way we want it to be played. Like there was nothing that we saw that went, yeah, that's him. Even when we met with him, even at his audition.
I mean, like, if you want to have a few bites, this is of this golden, delicious pizza slices.
But there was something, I sort of trusted something in myself to know that he would be right that even I didn't know I was aware of, if that makes any sense.
Again, Glenn had just knew that he was right for the role. And then I think once he knew that he had the role, he just really calmed down and came into his own.
And we just sort of, trusted in him that he could, just get over the nerves, which he did dramatically.
Glenn said that the reason I got cast was because later I messaged him saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry for doing such a bad audition. I'm really disappointed with it. I hope that I was really nervous, blah, 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 all that." And he said that's why, because I cared so much about the audition, I guess.
Then we need to find a bad guy. And we saw about probably 10 guys, I think. And as soon as Marty started speaking, I knew he was perfect.
I don't know. Who are you? I think I was contacted by the director, Glenn Triggs, who said, could I come out and meet with him and his wife, Bethia, who had co-written the script.
Little did I know that he's had an illustrious sort of musical career in Australia that's still continuing now.
And I went out, and from memory, I think I actually read for the part of the father. You're right, even more darkness. People, most likely. But I gotta say, I was really pleased in the end that they cast me as the bad guy. Because as a young actor, I was always Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. So to get my teeth into something a little darker was great fun.
I think he plays a bad guy better than he does a good guy, to be honest, from what I've seen. But he gives a great performance. And so much of a good performance that I actually added another scene into the film because I wanted to really sort of encapsulate the idea of his story within the film, because his characters just sort of jumped out so much that he needed something a bit stronger in his storyline. So we sort of added this scene around the fire with him and Ezekiel speaking, and he sort of explains his reasoning and his thoughts and feelings behind wanting the comet first. Which I think added to the film a lot and gave it a bit more weight, which it needed at that point.
Yeah, so I came for a callback, and everyone there that we were in a group audition the second time. Then I got to meet with everyone, and I'm like, wow, these are pretty talented actors, and because I saw each person's performance, and I thought it was really unique, especially Triggs, how he did his magic tricks and etc. And I thought this is actually really cool. And then out of the blue, spontaneous, Glenn's like, "You've got the role." And then I'm like, he said this to everyone.
Yeah, so I'll just say, we've sort of already chosen you guys. I think I've already told Liam, but we've already chosen you guys as the role for it. So you've got the roles, if that's what you... Just to let you know. So it's just
How do I join someone with someone I know?
He ended up telling us that we had the role, and I thought that was awesome.
Okay, great. That is fantastic.
That's awesome! But yeah, it was really exciting. And I remember going in the car with my mum being like,
Good to see you.
come through. This is our Comet Kids cast.
Oh, I recognise
He's playing
you got
Cliff.
big guns.
Zooming right in. Beautiful. There wasn't too many rehearsals, but it feels like there was heaps. Or they were pretty extensive.
I wanted the rehearsals to be very much about chemistry and, getting them very comfortable with each other.
Woo! Yay!
Yeah, the rehearsals, a lot of theatre games and just getting, they got to know each other personally and character-wise. Then we went through a lot of scenes and got the kids to have ideas about how scenes should be. And it was great for me to visualise, and Bernie came in for some rehearsals too, which was awesome, just to visualise how scenes can play out.
Obviously, Beechworth is a town. It's not a very big town. It's mostly just this cross Main Street. So that is the town, the entire town. And Glenn really wanted to block off a street be able to shoot this in the morning.
And as we were organising Beechworth, we booked it in with the council. We went up there a couple of times and met with them. And there was this weird sort of backlash from the town, some of the townspeople, the shop owners up there.
Because the residents of the town were really up in arms over the fact that the main street was going to be closed.
Yeah, they got really upset, and I got a call from like a local newspaper up there, and I didn't even have time to think about it. I had no idea what was going on. And this guy calls up and he's like, "Oh, have you got any comments to make about the the scenario in Beechworth and how the shop owners are pretty upset with you?" And I was like, "Oh, I think we've done everything right. We've got all the permits, and we've met with the appropriate people. We're not breaking any laws."
And the fact that it was going to be closed was going to be bad for business. All the local businesses needed to be compensated. And it was just a bit ridiculous because it was only going to be for a couple of hours. And that was kind of tricky because we thought, oh no, we're going to get there and then we're going to have like people, like rioting against us or whatever.
And I think that the townspeople might have thought the film was a lot bigger than it was. It ended up just literally being a trailer with a 4-wheel drive and 5 kids on bikes. That was kind of it. We had no lights, no rigs, no cranes, no nothing like that.
But obviously little do they realise like we would also be bringing business into the town because obviously we had to stay there. We all had to eat there. So, we'd be, boosting the economy as well. So, long term as well, it's going to be great business for that town of Beechworth.
Down the street.
Well, Beechworth was super fun for filming. I drove down there with Paris and Liam.
No, it's just funny.
What's happening?
All I learned from telly.
Here is the Stephen King.
This is going to be edited later, right?
Of course.
No, you've got to be in it.
I'm in it. My face is in it.
Hey, man.
We had to get up really early the next morning to start filming on the street.
And I'm not a morning person, so it was difficult. But like, once I was up, it was fine.
Good morning.
Film the bins.
The streets were shut down. All these old cars came through, which were absolutely beautiful.
Like wide awake, which is good.
What time did you get in last night?
10, I think.
Yeah, all the kids were riding their bikes up and down the street, and I was just like, yeah, this is cool. That feeling quickly turned to distress when we couldn't get the first shot. We were on the back of this trailer. My dad was driving it, and I wanted to have this really long shot, sort of moving backwards, and all the kids walk into the frame. I think there was one guy in a wheelchair that just sort of went right in front of the kids during one of the scenes, and everyone just kind of laughed.
Right in the middle of shooting, and a car just goes around the barriers and pulls in just so they can go to the newsagents to get their newspaper. So that was great.
It became very difficult because it was just timing, just simple timing. Like, one kid would walk too fast or 2 kids would come in at once, and then the camera sort of broke down. I think Bernie's sort of stable rig thing basically just collapsed and faltered. And so we're without any sort of stabilisation, so I said to him, just go handheld, I don't care.
The camera would bump because Bernie and Glenn were literally on a trailer. The cues were just wrong, or we were just finding our feet, I guess.
And then obviously being that the time of day it was, trying to get the right light, because I'm pretty sure the scene is supposed to be in the evening at sunset and we're filming at sunrise.
And yeah, the sun was coming up and I'm like, oh man, the sun's coming up. We haven't got this shot. I think we did like 10 takes or 12 takes.
It's all happening very quickly. So, if you look at the shots from when they first started, it's really quite dark. And then like as the more takes go on, it gets really quite light. So it was really trying to find that perfect take where all the kids were in doing exactly what they wanted. It was smooth, but the light was nice. I think it was really hard for Glenn to find the right one.
And then we just eventually got it as the sun was rising, and later on I would put like digital stabilisation on it and warp stabiliser, and the shot looks perfect. It's such a perfect shot, and I love how long it goes for. We turned up, we shot the scene, we're done in an hour and a half, or hour 40 minutes, whatever it was. And I think they were all pleasantly surprised. Yeah, there was an article in the paper, I think a few days later, that they were very happy with how it all went. But yeah, they put a bit of stress on us for no reason. There was no reason for that sort of stress. And it did stress us out. For a couple of days, it was quite sort of, what have we done? What have we done? The bikes were difficult to find because I wanted authentic 1950s bikes. And I looked online, they were quite expensive, some of them, and I found this woman that was selling some on Gumtree.
Glenn contacted me on Gumtree when I was selling an old bike. And he asked if I had any more, and I saw his email signature was for a film company. I thought, that's interesting. I don't have any more, but I wonder what you need and whether I can help. And what he needed was 4 1950s bikes, and I could help.
Yeah, the bikes were really old. They were from the 1950s and they were just really cool.
I think the first time we rode our bikes was during Beechworth, and when we rode our bikes there, what ended up happening was when we were riding up a steep hill, my chain to my bike ended up coming loose, coming off, so I couldn't ride the bike, so I had to hop off the bike and run after everybody, pushing the bike up the hill.
And I just remember Harry was just running with his bike, and I was like, what are you running for?
And the bikes would break, and they're like, often, all the time, basically. They were just constantly in repairs, especially mine. I think like halfway through, it just didn't want to work at all, and so like one of the pedals is just completely broken.
Yeah, those bikes took a beating. By the end of it, we were chucking them off cliffs and throwing them on trees and stuff, and now they're wrecked. Like they've had it. I've still got them all. I want to keep them. I'd love to sort of get a big studio one day and just put them all on a wall or something. That'd be kind of fun.
Here he is. Here's the burn stuff.
Talk me hands a little bit.
Goes on.
Like that's when we use them for the mold stuff.
Oh no.
Hi, Harry.
Hey. You know what's dancing?
Nice job.
Hello.
Hey, Chris. Yeah.
Oh my God, he's serious.
It's not focused.
Awesome. Earring.
We went to these mines far out Victoria. When we arrived there, it was so quiet. It was like a ghost town almost.
Oh, sorry.
And then you just stop. Let's go. Come.
Let's go, guys.
Go.
Right. Do you know what Rhone? Massive mines going down. It was like 23 kilometers, like the links from the mines, from one mine to the other mine. It was unbelievable.
Walking down the mines, there was this really long walkway and many minutes of walking down and walking up and carrying equipment and having to walk back down and back up and getting lightheaded every now and then.
I got it in a matter of seconds. You suck!
Good. Well, like, I'm not the most fit person, so the hardest part was probably going up and down or up the hill really. Down the hill was fine.
Yeah, it was interesting because it was definitely a different climate, different setting that we had to film in that we weren't used to, so it took a while, but it was a new experience and it was so much fun, and I think we all really enjoyed being down there as well, even though we had to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, but it was worth it. It was definitely worth it.
It was really tiring walking up and down the mines, but when you're down in the mines, it was a lot of fun filming. Since we did a lot of separate scenes with people, like there were scenes with maybe just Paris was needed, or Paris and Juliette were needed.
There was a lot of action in those scenes, like, the kids are meant to be, looking down to a well, and they're meant to be running back and forth, and all this sort of stuff was meant to happen. Yeah, it was slightly stressful, but it was just, it's more just communication and moving around, and we kept getting in trouble for being in areas of the mines we shouldn't have been in, even though we had access to them. Like, tour groups were coming through at the same time, So we're filming this, film. We've got a dog and 5 kids running around the mines, and tour groups coming past and just, snapping photos of us, which is kind of weird.
You're enjoying the COMET kids?
Yeah, probably. There's another battery over there.
And it was pretty good scenes down there. Like I reckon the most strongest scenes were down the mines, especially for like all the COMET kids.
And there's that one shot in the mines when it's this long sort of conversation piece and the kids are deciding if they're going to split up or not. I wanted Xavier at the front, all the other kids behind him. And we were initially going to just do heaps of cuts, just cut to each character. And then I kept thinking, all throughout production, what's the way I can get some of these shots in one shot? Like this whole scene can be in one shot. So I just said, let's put the camera in front of him. And we thought this quite early actually, put the camera right in front of Xavier, all the kids are behind, and all the kids sort of pop their heads in and out, saying their bits and pieces, and we sort of pull focus to that. On the day, the kids got the scene really well, like they rehearsed it, they got it, but it was almost impossible to pull focus because there was so much like, and we had 20 minutes set aside to shoot this shot. And then Bernie and myself, we looked at each other and we're like, let's just keep focus on Xavier. Like it's still gonna work, it's gonna look really cool.
Inertia?
Well, north is that way.
Okay, so maybe...
Nobody breathe.
If there's air, there's a way out.
No air.
And that was great working with Bernie because all throughout production, he was always having the same ideas I was, which was fantastic. Like I'd always sort of think, I think the camera might be good here. He's like, good. Like he was happy on my decisions, which I loved. We never fought about any shots. I think he might have thought some of my shots were silly, but then later on he's seen the final product and he's like, oh, that worked. And I'm like, yeah, cool, it should. It did, it does. You made it work, we made it work.
Archie, go get help, go!
Like the mines was one that was tricky because with the radio mics, you're in a tunnel, and as soon as they kind of walk out of line of sight, the radio mic will kind of lose reception. And in the open, if you go around a thing, there's enough room for the audio waves to get around, or the radio waves. But in the mines, I've found that you've got a lot less range because they're pretty thick walls. And the mines are good because it's a very quiet space, and if you're using a boom and stuff like that, you get a really clean sound because there's no background sound because you're in like a cave underground. So it's a good, and because it's so echoey, you're in a mine, it doesn't matter if it sounds echoey because it kind of adds to the feel of the place. So
I think in the mines was where we ended up creating the behind the scenes COMET Kids podcast thing.
Because it was literally me stealing Elliott's mic, boom mic, and just going, just starting this, hey, welcome to the COMET Kids podcast.
Hey, welcome back to Guns Vlogs. Here we have Elliott, the sound man.
You made me.
His Lucas. Hey, Mr. Dog, somewhere there, I can't see him.
Bernie, hello. I've got your rolls, mate.
And then I edited that up and made it actually into a podcast and published it on iTunes and stuff. So there's this kind of joke podcast going around for the second half of the filming where we'd go around just asking the most ridiculous questions, like who's your favourite COMET kid? I think that the shortest one's like about 10 seconds long, and then they average about a minute, 30 seconds to a minute. Because
we had a lot of fun with that, and we ended up doing that in other locations as well.
We've got a fair bit, we got most of it done that day, and then I sort of thought we need to go back and just get at least another 10 shots because I just needed to sort of open up the scale of where they were. And I think the kids were pretty hesitant to go back there. It was pretty far away. It was probably like a 4 hour drive to get there for some of them. And then we got down into the mines that morning and we filmed for, I think it was like 2 hours or 3 hours. I think it was actually under 3. And the kids are like, we've got a fair bit to do today. And I'm like, we're done. Like we just needed those 10 shots. And they were like, oh, really? Cool.
My foot's stuck! And there's a pipe that's burst! And it's leaking water really fast!
There's a scene in the film where Claudia and Inertia fall down this well in a mine, and there's water rising really quickly.
The idea was to use a water tank, to use an actual water tank and sort of cut it in half. Got my friend Brad to come around, he cut the water tank in half. I spent probably $300 on expanding foam cans, and I sprayed the whole inside of this water tank. And then I think I used silver and black spray paint and just sprayed over the top. And we had this awesome, crazy large sort of cave type of well set to put into a pool. And Rosemary, Juliette's mum, was very lovely to say we could use their pool for the scene.
We were originally meant to film at my place because I have a pool, but on the day of filming, Glenn had got there with like this giant water tank we were going to use as the hole that we'd fallen down in the mine. And he'd arrived, and this tank, I don't think anyone realised how massive it was, because it was massive. And there was no way we could have gotten it into the pool, like over the fence or through the front gate or through the house. It was so big.
So my dad calls up my uncle, Alan, and he says, you know, can a film crew turn up to your house tonight and, you know, set up some lights and chuck a bunch of kids in your pool? And he's like, yeah, it's fine. So nice, so calm, so relaxed.
So we raced out to their place and got it done.
Put the water tank in their pool. Bernie's setting up lights, and I think I hopped in the pool with it, and I'm trying to push it under the water, and it wouldn't go down.
It wouldn't sink because it was foam and it was very buoyant. So we're trying to like, we'll put rocks on and make it sink. But yeah, we just could not get it underwater, and like, this is not going to happen. You know, the whole thing was just floating like crazy, like a ship. It's like, imagine walking up to an actual boat and trying to push it underwater. It wouldn't sink, even full of water. It just was straight up.
We didn't realise that it would float when it was put on water. And so we spent ages trying to make it sink, putting rocks in it, people standing in it, but it just wouldn't sink in the pools.
Oh no, we can't even get it in the water. So we're standing around for probably an hour, and I'm just like, we'll have to figure something else out. We've got to get some, like we even put weights in it at one point, trying to weigh it down. I jumped in it, trying to push it down with my 90 kilos of body weight, just pushing it to the bottom. Nothing. And
Glenn was like freaking out, we can't get this, to work. We're gonna have to shoot another day. But then I had this idea that what if we like cut the tank in half, so then we can use the top half as like a backdrop that will float on the water, because we can't get it underwater. We'll make it float, so it'll be like a floating backdrop.
Luckily someone had like a chainsaw or something, got to like saw it in half and...
Yeah, so we've just cut the, what have we done?
We just we found out the tank couldn't sink because it's full of foam and it floats. So we just cut the
cut it in half. We chucked it in the water, and it sat on top of the water, which is what it was meant to do. We had a few people around there holding it. The girls jump in, and it works perfectly.
Paris and I and Bernie and Glenn, we were all in the pool for probably 2 hours or so. And it was very, very cold.
And it was freezing, the pool water was so cold. And we had this giant water tank surrounding us, and at the same time I had like a hose being splashed in my face. It really tested your acting skills, I think, as well, and especially what you can do in the moment, because we had to just get everything done as quickly as possible because we were freezing our asses off. But it was, at the same time, it was so much fun. Like Julie and I bonded so much that day, and like Glenn and Bernie were there, and it was just so much fun. It was really like different experience to what we had done previously, and I loved that day so much, even though it was super hard to act while you're getting water blasted at you.
So yeah, what was a possible disaster worked out, and funnily enough, if we had known to cut it earlier, we would have had a much smaller piece to move around, and we would have just filmed it that night at Juliette's house anyway. So we went up to Macedon one day. I think I went up there with Jason, my brother, and Dad. And we're driving around, and then all of a sudden we come across this massive open area, this big sort of deforestation spot. And I was like, wow, this is big. Like, it was huge. It was like, a couple of football ovals in size, maybe bigger. You couldn't really tell how big it was because we never walked. I don't think anyone walked directly across it, even when we shot it. It was so large. Yeah, I saw it and I was like, that's the crater site. Like, that's where the comet has to crash. Like, that was just such a cool, whether or not people think it's a deforested spot in the film or the comet has created it, either way, it looks amazing.
And it was, a very large set. I mean, it was a landscape, an incredible landscape, and all credit to the producers and directors for finding, such a great set. But the problem was that it was so large, and it was so huge, and it was so real. So every time we had to set up a shot, one was over there, and then the next one was over there, and then the next one was over the hill over there. So we spent a lot of time walking around trying to, just get from one point to the other. And because the earth, and because that earth had all been churned up and levelled, it was very difficult underfoot.
Where we'd be like running through this debris almost of like all these dead trees and like giant sticks and logs, and I would just like, I'd have cuts like all up my legs.
Things slowed down a lot that day, big time, because people were spread out so much. And I think we only had one walkie-talkie system. So we had like these guys doing the drone stuff. We had Bernie shooting some stuff. The kids run around, and we had to get this. There was one particular shot where Hamish had to run towards the kids and the kids had to run towards Hamish. And it just wasn't happening.
Okay, run like 200 meters this way. Okay, let's do it again and again and again. Like, which is great, but at the time I was like, like, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, it was just slow. I remember just running back and forth so many times. I was like, all right, you know, checking the shot, all right, you do this. And I ran back out, 200 meters to get Hamish's attention. And one of the issues was that Hamish was obsessed with me and Dad. So that sometimes helped because I could run to one location where Hamish he'd run to. But some of the time I'm behind the camera, he just wanted to get to me.
It almost felt like unorganized, even though I knew it was like, everyone knew what they were doing.
And I think Chris even came up to me, he's like, this is not that organized. And I'm like, it's as organized as I can get it. And we made things work, I think everything sort of went handheld, and I was like, just, yelling at everyone saying, we've got to get this, got to do this, got to do this. I'm sure I annoyed some people, but we had to. I didn't want to come back, but we came back anyway.
I think one of the most challenging things about my role in the film were the fight scenes with Lucas and with the dog, because I found this stick that was perfect walking support height, a bit like a shepherd with his crook. And of course I use that piece of wood to try and beat the crap out of Lucas. But I kept putting it down after each take, and then I would wander off and I would have difficulty finding my stick. And we all know how important continuity is in a film. So I spent half the day wandering around the landscape looking for my stick. And the amazing thing about all of this was I actually kept finding it. It was almost as if I was destined to find the stick. I think one of the most difficult things about wearing those yellow plastic or whatever they are costumes, radiation costumes, was just how hot it was inside them. And it was not unusual to actually take them off at the end of the day, and the inside of the costumes would be literally soaked with our body sweat, and our clothes would be soaked with our body sweat. So it was really quite uncomfortable to be in there, because even though they were so light, they were very light, they were almost paper light, they were like being inside of like a heat box, which made the physicality of some of the scenes very difficult. And I think that's why at the end of many of the shoot days in that area, we were all so exhausted.
So for weeks and weeks, I remember speaking to Chris because I wanted the kids to cross this log, this really sort of treacherous, log. And I'd spoken to Chris and I'm like, we can't shoot this for real. And, find like a log bump between two cliffs somewhere that's just going to be super dangerous. I want it to look like it's really high. We found some logs, but nothing looked, scary enough to be as sort of epic as I was hoping. And then I kind of thought, maybe we can build it as a miniature. And as soon as I thought that, I was like, that's fun.
So Glenn loves the old school cinema where everything was real, like it's not done with a computer. He likes to look at that image and go, that's been made, that's something you can touch, it's real. So he thought, I'll make a miniature.
So I spent like 9 months building a miniature. It shouldn't have taken 9 months, but I took my time. I let everything dry properly and painted them black and then sprinkled it with green sawdust and some little miniature trees from the miniature shop.
It all ended up coming together really nicely because I'm looking at it going, I don't know how these two boxes are going to be an actual set. But it all came together really nicely and it actually looked really real. Got these nice big rocks and painted it all and it just looked really good. And then I think when they were going to film it, then there was the time to get the log that was going to join the two cliff faces, I guess, together. And it's tricky as well to get everything in the right ratio, I guess. And when they started, it was like, it literally was a twig that was going across. And Bernie's filming, it's like, Glenn, it looks like a twig. So we managed, I think we found something else, but I think it came out really nicely. It looks really good and it's nice to have that piece of memorabilia from the film, I think.
Hey guys.
One at a time.
just to be safe.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, it's been a personal film for me. I feel like all the kids are a little piece of myself. You know, Lucas is the leader, the director. I've always been into magic most of my life, so that's where Harry comes from. Juliette has red hair. Paris is into like electronics and all that sort of stuff, that, you know, like tinkering with things and building stuff. And Guns is like, you know, the fitness sort of, you know, karate sort of guy, which I've been into as well throughout my life. So yeah, they're all a little piece of me. The film is kind of about my dad and about my son. Even though I think at the point when I wrote the script, we've got like Grace, the granddaughter in the film. She's obviously a female, and we thought we're having a girl. So that's where that comes into the film, I guess.
When I first was introduced to the producers in the film, I thought, oh, here's another small independent film that probably won't see the light of day. But almost from day one, when I saw the ambitiousness of the whole project and the vision of both the director and the cinematographer and the people working on it, my confidence that this film could really be a little gem in terms of its appeal to young people and older people. I love films with flashbacks, and this film has a great flashback in it. And the longer I worked on the film, the more my love of the project and my confidence that this could be really something quite special grew.
So well made, and such like love was put into it. Like the whole cast became a family during filming. I feel like we all know each other so well.
Hopefully the people at my school that say they are going to watch it are actually going to watch it and not just say, hey, I watched it, there was a dog in it.
I don't think this will be forgotten like ever, which is awesome. I'm glad that it's so memorable and not just like a throwaway thing.
I, as with anything, like enjoy sort of watching Glenn make everything happen. It just, I don't know how he quite does that. Like with any film he does, he just decides it's gonna, I really want to make this, and just finds a way to make it happen.
One of the things that really struck me about the people who were making the film is just how far they went to make it authentic. I mean, it's set in the 50s, it's set in the Midwest of the US, and down to the cars, down to the clothes, down to the locations, the town that they scouted in Victoria, Australia, for the actual town where it's all centred, you know, just gives the film its high degree of authenticity, and you don't often see that in small budget independent films, so all credit to everyone.
People, I think, especially families and things like that, you need to see films like that, because it's one of those ones where you watch it and you can't help but smile, and it's such an enjoyable experience.
And I've loved every minute, and I am genuinely upset that it's coming to an end, because I don't want this to end, really. I don't want to have to finish it.